Giza Pyramid Complex. The Giza Pyramid Complex, also called the Giza Necropolis in Egypt, is home to the Great Pyramid, the Pyramid of Khafre, and the Pyramid of Menkaure, along with their associated pyramid complexes and the Great Sphinx. All were built during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom of Ancient Egypt, between c. 2600 c. to 500 BC. The site also includes several temples, cemeteries, and the remains of a workers' village. The site is at the edge of the Western Desert, approximately 9 kilometers 5.6 mi west of the Nile River in the city of Giza, and about 13 kilometers 8.1 mi southwest of the city center of Cairo. It forms the northernmost part of the 16,000 ha 160 km 262 sq mi pyramid fields of the Memphis and its necropolis UNESCO World Heritage Site, inscribed in 1979. The pyramid fields include the Abuser, Saqqara, and Dahshur pyramid complexes, which were all built in the vicinity of Egypt's ancient capital of Memphis. Further Old Kingdom pyramid fields were located at the sites Abu Rosh, Zayet el Aryan, and Mihdam. The Great Pyramid and the Pyramid of Khafre are the largest pyramids built in ancient Egypt, and they have historically been common as emblems of ancient Egypt in the Western imagination. They were popularized in Hellenistic times, when the Great Pyramid was listed by Antipater of Sidon as one of the 7 wonders of the world. It is by far the oldest of the ancient wonders, and the only one still in existence. Literature on ancient Giza is vast. For an overview with further references, see Manoulian or Leonard and Hawass. Mahdi settlements. The earliest settlement of the Giza Plateau predates the pyramid complexes. 4 jars from the Mahdi culture were found at the foot of the Great Pyramid, likely from a disturbed earlier settlement. Further Mahdi settlement near the site was uncovered during work on the Greater Cairo Wastewater Project. Recent reassessment of the radiocarbon dating puts the Mahdi culture's eponymous settlement to c. 3800 c. 3400 BC, which is also the likely maximum possible range for the Giza remains. Pyramids and Sphinx. The Giza Pyramid Complex consists of the Great Pyramid, also known as the Pyramid of Cheops or Khufu, and constructed c. 2580 c. 2560 BC, the somewhat smaller Pyramid of Khafre or Chephren a few hundred meters to the southwest, and the relatively modest-sized Pyramid of Menkaure or Mykerinos a few hundred meters farther southwest. The Great Sphinx lies on the east side of the complex. Consensus among Egyptologists is that the head of the Great Sphinx is that of Khafre. Along with these major monuments are a number of smaller satellite edifices, known as queens, pyramids, causeways, and temples. Besides the archaeological structures, the ancient landscape has also been investigated. Khufu's complex. Khufu's pyramid complex consists of a valley temple, now buried beneath the village of Nazlet el Salman. Diabase paving and Nummulitic limestone walls have been found, but the site has not been excavated. The valley temple was connected to a causeway that was largely destroyed when the village was constructed. The causeway led to the mortuary temple of Khufu, which was connected to the pyramid. Of this temple, the basalt pavement is the only thing that remains. The King's Pyramid has 3 smaller Queen's Pyramids associated with it, and 3 boat pits. The boat pits contained a ship, and the 2 pits on the south side of the pyramid contained intact ships when excavated. One of these ships, the Khufu ship, has been restored and was originally displayed at the Giza Solar Boat Museum, then subsequently moved to the Grand Egyptian Museum. Khufu's pyramid still has a limited number of casing stones at its base. These casing stones were made of fine white limestone quarried at Tora. Khafre's complex. Khafre's pyramid complex consists of a valley temple, the Sphinx temple, a causeway, a mortuary temple, and the King's Pyramid. The valley temple yielded several statues of Khafre. Several were found in a well in the floor of the temple by Mariette in 1860. Others were found during successive excavations by Sieglin 1909-1910, Junker, Reisner, and Hassan. Khafre's complex contained 5 boat pits and a subsidiary pyramid with a serdab. Khafre's pyramid appears larger than the adjacent Khufu pyramid by virtue of its more elevated location, and the steeper angle of inclination of its construction. It is, in fact, smaller in both height and volume. Khafre's pyramid retains a prominent display of casing stones at its apex. Menkaur's complex. Menkaur's pyramid complex consists of a valley temple, a causeway, a mortuary temple, and the king's pyramid. The valley temple once contained several statues of Menkaur. During the 5th dynasty, a smaller anti-temple was added on to the valley temple. The mortuary temple also yielded several statues of Menkaur. The king's pyramid, completed c. 2510 BC, has 3 subsidiary or queen's pyramids. Of the 4 major monuments, only Menkaur's pyramid is seen today without any of its original polished limestone casing. Sphinx. Most construction theories are based on the idea that the pyramids were built by moving huge stones from a quarry and dragging and lifting them into place. Disagreements arise over the feasibility of the different proposed methods by which the stones were conveyed and placed. In the milieu of levering methods, there are those that lift the block incrementally, as in repeatedly prying up alternating sides of the block and inserting wooden or stone shims to gradually move the stone up one course. And there are other methods that use a larger lever to move the block up one course in one lifting procedure. Since the discussion of construction techniques to lift the blocks attempts to resolve a gap in the archaeological and historical record, with a plausible functional explanation, the following examples by Euler, Keeble, and Hussey Palos list experimentally tested methods. Euler's method 1985, 1987 is an incremental method, and, in the Nova experiment 1992, used wooden shims, or cribbing. Euler was able to lift a block up one tier in approximately 1 hour and 30 minutes. Peter Hodges's and Julian Keeble's method is similar to Euler's method and instead used small manufactured concrete blocks as shims, wooden pallets, and a pit where their experimental tests were performed. Keeble was able to perform his method in approximately 2 minutes. Scott Hussey Palos's 2005 method uses a simple levering device to lift a block up a course in one movement. This method was tested with materials of less strength than historical analogs, tested with materials weaker than those available in ancient Egypt, a factor of safety of 2, and lifted a 2,500-pound block up one course in under a minute. This method is presented as a levering device to work complementary with Mark Lehner's idea of a combined ramp and levering techniques. Harbors. Egyptians used the now disappeared branch of the Nile to transport the tons of construction materials. A 2012 study led by geographer Haider Shisha at Aix-Marseille University proposed that the former waterscapes and higher river levels around 4,500 years ago facilitated the construction of the Giza Pyramid complex. The Nile's present waterways have receded too far from the pyramid sites to be of use. Pyramid building experiments, Yoshimura. In 1978, Nippon TV funded the pyramid building project conceived by archaeologist Sayuki Yoshimura. It was originally planned as a 1:5 scale model of the Great Pyramid. Because of the limited budget, the size had to be drastically reduced when the price of limestone rose as the project gained publicity. A concrete foundation had to be poured as the selected site offered no bedrock basis. With the help of 2 cranes and a forklift, the pyramid was built to reach a height of 11 meters 36 ft, with a 15 meters 49 ft base. The structure was ultimately dismantled and hauled away. Nova. In 1992, Mark Lehner and stonemason Roger Hopkins conducted a 3-week pyramid building experiment for a Nova television episode. They built a pyramid 6 meters 20 ft high by 9 meters 30 ft wide, consisting of a total of 162 cubic meters 5,700 CUF, or about 405 tons. Khufu's complex. Khufu's pyramid complex consists of a valley temple, now buried beneath the village of Nazlet El Salmon. Diabase paving and Nummulitic limestone walls have been found, but the site has not been excavated. The Valley Temple was connected to a causeway that was largely destroyed when the village was constructed. The causeway led to the mortuary temple of Khufu, which was connected to the pyramid. Of this temple, the basalt pavement is the only thing that remains. The King's Pyramid has 3 smaller Queen's Pyramids associated with it, and 3 boat pits. The boat pits contained a ship, and the 2 pits on the south side of the pyramid contained intact ships when excavated. One of these ships, the Khufu ship, has been restored and was originally displayed at the Giza Solar Boat Museum, then subsequently moved to the Grand Egyptian Museum. Khufu's pyramid still has a limited number of casing stones at its base. These casing stones were made of fine white limestone quarried at Tora. Khafre's complex. Khafre's pyramid complex consists of a valley temple, the Sphinx temple, a causeway, a mortuary temple, and the King's Pyramid. The valley temple yielded several statues of Khafre. Several were found in a well in the floor of the temple by Mariette in 1860. Others were found during successive excavations by Sieglin 1909-1910, Junker, Reisner, and Hassan. Khafre's complex contained 5 boat pits and a subsidiary pyramid with a serdab. Khafre's pyramid appears larger than the adjacent Khufu pyramid by virtue of its more elevated location, and the steeper angle of inclination of its construction. It is, in fact, smaller in both height and volume. Khafre's pyramid retains a prominent display of casing stones at its apex. Menkaur's complex. Menkaur's pyramid complex consists of a valley temple, a causeway, a mortuary temple, and the King's Pyramid. The valley temple once contained several statues of Menkaur. During the 5th dynasty, a smaller anti-temple was added on to the valley temple. The mortuary temple also yielded several statues of Menkaur. The King's Pyramid, completed c. 2510 BC, has 3 subsidiary or Queen's Pyramids. Of the 4 major monuments, only Menkaur's pyramid is seen today without any of its original polished limestone casing. Sphinx. Most construction theories are based on the idea that the pyramids were built by moving huge stones from a quarry and dragging and lifting them into place. Disagreements arise over the feasibility of the different proposed methods by which the stones were conveyed and placed. In building the pyramids, the architects might have developed their techniques over time. They would select a site on a relatively flat area of bedrocknet sand which provided a stable foundation. After carefully surveying the site and laying down the first level of stones, they constructed the pyramids in horizontal levels, one on top of the other. For the Great Pyramid, most of the stone for the interior seems to have been quarried immediately to the south of the construction site. The smooth exterior of the pyramid was made of a fine grade of white limestone that was quarried across the Nile. These exterior blocks had to be carefully cut, transported by river barge to Giza, and dragged up ramps to the construction site. Only a few exterior blocks remain in place at the bottom of the Great Pyramid. During the Middle Ages 5th century to 15th century, people may have taken the rest away for building projects in the city of Cairo. To ensure that the pyramid remained symmetrical, the exterior casing stones all had to be equal in height and width. Workers might have marked all the blocks to indicate the angle of the pyramid wall, and trimmed the surfaces carefully so that the blocks fit together. During construction, the outer surface of the stone was smooth limestone. Excess stone has eroded over time. New insights into the closing stages of the Great Pyramid building were provided by the recent find of Wadi El Jarf papyri, especially the diary of Inspector Merer, whose team was assigned to deliver the white limestone from Tora quarries to Giza. The journal was already published, as well as a popular account of the importance of this discovery. Purpose. The pyramids of Giza and others are thought to have been constructed to house the remains of the deceased pharaohs who ruled ancient Egypt. A portion of the pharaoh's spirit, called his Ka, was believed to remain with his corpse. Proper care of the remains was necessary in order for the former pharaoh to perform his new duties as king of the dead. It is theorized the pyramid not only served as a tomb for the pharaoh, but also as a storage pit for various items he would need in the afterlife. The people of ancient Egypt believed that death on earth was the start of a journey to the next world. The embalmed body of the king was entombed underneath or within the pyramid to protect it and allow his transformation and ascension to the afterlife. Astronomy. The sides of all three of the Giza pyramids were astronomically oriented to the cardinal directions within a small fraction of a degree. According to the disputed Orion correlation theory, the arrangement of the pyramids is a representation of the constellation Orion. Workers' village. The work of quarrying, moving, setting, and sculpting the huge amount of stone used to build the pyramids might have been accomplished by several thousand skilled workers, unskilled laborers, and supporting workers. Bakers, carpenters, water carriers, and others were also needed for the project. Along with the methods used to construct the pyramids, there is also wide speculation regarding the exact number of workers needed for a building project of this magnitude. When Greek historian Herodotus visited Giza in 450 BC, he was told by Egyptian priests that the Great Pyramid had taken 400,000 men 20 years to build, working in 3-month shifts, 100,000 men at a time. Evidence from the tombs indicates that a workforce of 10,000 laborers working in 3-month shifts took around 30 years to build a pyramid. The Giza Pyramid complex is surrounded by a large stone wall, outside which Mark Lehner and his team discovered a town where the pyramid workers were housed. The village is located to the southeast of the Kafr and Menkaure complexes. Among the discoveries at the workers' village are communal sleeping quarters, bakeries, breweries, and kitchens with evidence showing that bread, beef, and fish were dietary staples, a copper workshop, a hospital, and a cemetery where some of the skeletons were found with signs of trauma associated with accidents on a building site. The metal processed at the site was the so-called arsenical copper. The same material was also identified among the copper artifacts from the Cromer site, from the reigns of Khufu and Kafr. The workers' town appears to date from the Middle 4th Dynasty to 520–2472 BC. After the accepted time of Khufu and completion of the Great Pyramid. According to Lehner and the ERA team, the development of this urban complex must have been rapid. All of the construction probably happened in the 35 to 50 years that spanned the reigns of Kafr and Menkaure, builders of the second and third Giza pyramids. Using pottery shards, seal impressions, and stratigraphy to date the site, the team further concludes. The picture that emerges is that of a planned settlement, some of the world's earliest urban planning, securely dated to the reigns of two Giza pyramid builders, Kafr 2520–494 BC and Menkaure 2490–472 BC. Radiocarbon data for the Old Kingdom Giza Plateau and the workers' settlement were published in 2006 and then re-evaluated in 2011. Cemeteries. As the pyramids were constructed, the mastabas for lesser royals were constructed around them. Near the Pyramid of Khufu, the main cemetery is G7000, which lies in the East Field, located to the east of the main pyramid and next to the Queen's Pyramids. These cemeteries around the pyramids were arranged along streets and avenues. 28 Cemetery G7000 was one of the earliest and contained tombs of wives, sons, and daughters of these 4th dynasty rulers. On the other side of the pyramid, in the West Field, the royal sons Wepemnefret and Hemiunu were buried in Cemetery G1200 and Cemetery G4000, respectively. These cemeteries were further expanded during the 5th and 6th dynasties. West Field. The West Field is located to the west of Khufu's pyramid. It is divided into smaller areas, such as the cemeteries referred to as the Abu Bakr. Excavations 1949–1950, 19,501,951, 1952, and 1953, and several cemeteries named based on the mastaba numbers, such as Cemetery G1000, Cemetery G1100, etc. The West Field contains Cemetery G1000, Cemetery G1600, and Cemetery G1900. Further cemeteries in this field are Cemeteries G2000, G2200, G2500, G3000, G4000, and G6000. 3 other cemeteries are named after their excavators: Junkers Cemetery West, Junkers Cemetery East, and Steindorf Cemetery. East Field. The East Field is located to the east of Khufu's pyramid and contains Cemetery G7000. This cemetery was a burial place for some of the family members of Khufu. The cemetery also includes mastabas from tenants and priests of the pyramids dated to the 5th dynasty and 6th dynasty. Cemetery GIS. This cemetery dates from the time of Menkaure Junker or earlier Reisner, and contains several stone-built mastabas dating from as late as the 6th dynasty. Tombs from the time of Menkaure include the mastabas of the royal chamberlain Kame-Nefert, the king's son Kufa Jadif, master of the royal largesse, and an official named Nyankar. Central Field. The Central Field contains several burials of royal family members. The tombs range in date from the end of the 4th dynasty to the 5th dynasty, or even later. Tombs dating from the Sate and later period were found near the causeway of Kafur and the Great Sphinx. These tombs include the tomb of a commander of the army named Ahmose, and his mother, Queen Naktubastera, who was the wife of Pharaoh Amasis II. South Field. The South Field includes mastabas dating from the 1st dynasty to 3rd dynasty, as well as later burials. Of the more significant of these early dynastic tombs are one referred to as Covington's tomb, otherwise known as Mastaba T, and the large Mastaba V, which contained artifacts naming the 1st dynasty pharaoh Jet. Other tombs date from the late Old Kingdom 5th and 6th dynasty. The south section of the field contains several tombs dating from the Sate period and later. Tombs of the pyramid builders. In 1990, tombs belonging to the pyramid workers were discovered alongside the pyramids, with an additional burial site found nearby. In 2009, although not mummified, they had been buried in mud brick tombs with beer and bread to support them in the afterlife. The tomb's proximity to the pyramids and the manner of burial supports the theory that they were paid laborers who took pride in their work and were not slaves, as was previously thought. Evidence from the tombs indicates that a workforce of 10,000 laborers working in 3-month shifts took around 30 years to build a pyramid. Most of the workers appear to have come from poor families. Specialists such as architects, masons, metalworkers, and carpenters were permanently employed by the king to fill positions that required the most skill. Shafts. There are multiple burial shafts and various unfinished shafts and tunnels located in the Giza complex that were discovered and mentioned prominently by Selim Hassan in his report Excavations at Giza 19,331,934. He states, "Very few of the Satic referring to the Sate period shafts have been thoroughly examined, for the reason that most of them are flooded." Osiris Shaft. The Osiris shaft is a narrow burial shaft leading to 3 levels for a tomb, and below it a flooded area. It was first mentioned by Hassan, and a thorough excavation was conducted by a team led by Hawass in 1999. It was opened to tourists in November 2017. New Kingdom and Late Period. During the New Kingdom, Giza was still an active site. A brick-built chapel was constructed near the Sphinx during the early 18th dynasty, probably by King Thutmose I. Amenhotep II built a temple dedicated to Horon Hermakhet near the Sphinx. As a prince, the future pharaoh Thutmose IV visited the pyramids and the Sphinx. He reported being told in a dream that if he cleared the sand that had built up around the Sphinx, he would be rewarded with kingship. This event is recorded in the dream stele, which he had installed between the Sphinx's front legs. During the early years of his reign, Thutmose IV, together with his wife Queen Nefertari, had stelae erected at Giza. Pharaoh Tutankhamun had a structure built, which is now referred to as the King's Rest House. During the 19th dynasty, Seti I added to the temple of Hor-en-Hermekhet, and his son Ramesses II erected a stela in the chapel before the Sphinx and usurped the rest house of Tutankhamun. During the 21st dynasty, the temple of Isis, mistress of the pyramids, was reconstructed. During the 26th dynasty, a stela made in this time mentions Khufu and his queen Henutsen. Division of the 19,031,905 excavation of the Giza necropolis. In 1903, rights to excavate the Westfield and pyramids of the Giza necropolis were divided by 3 institutions from Italy, Germany, and the United States of America. Background: prior to the division of the Giza Plateau into 3 institutional concessions in 1903, amateur and private excavations at the Giza necropolis had been permitted to operate. The work of these amateur archaeologists failed to meet high scientific standards. Montague Ballard, for instance, excavated in the Western Cemetery with the hesitant permission of the Egyptian Antiquities Service, and neither kept records of his finds nor published them. Italian, German, and American concessions at Giz. In 1902, the Egyptian Antiquities Service under Gaston Maspero resolved to issue permits exclusively to authorized individuals representing public institutions. In November of that year, the service awarded 3 scholars with concessions on the Giza necropolis. They were the Italian Ernesto Schiaparelli from the Turin Museum, the German Georg Steindorf from the University of Leipzig, who had funding from Wilhelm Pelazius, and the American George Reisner from the Hearst expedition. Within a matter of months, the site had been divided between the concessionaires. Following a meeting at the Mina House Hotel involving Schiaparelli, Ludwig Burchard Steindorf's representative in Egypt, and Reisner, division of the West Field. By the turn of the 20th century, the 3 largest pyramids on the Giza Plateau were considered mostly exhausted by previous excavations, so the Western Cemetery and its collection of private mastaba tombs were thought to represent the richest unexcavated part of the plateau. George Reisner's wife, Mary, drew names from a hat to assign 3 long east-west plots of the necropolis among the Italian, German, and American missions. Schiaparelli was assigned the southernmost strip, Burchard the center, and Reisner the northernmost. Division of the pyramids. Rights to excavate the pyramids were then also negotiated between Schiaparelli, Burchard, and Reisner. Schiaparelli gained rights to excavate the Great Pyramid of Khufu, along with its 3 associated Queen's Pyramids and most of its eastern cemetery. Burchard received Khafre's Pyramid, its causeway, the Sphinx, and the Sphinx's associated temples. Reisner claimed Menkaur's Pyramid, as well as its associated Queen's Pyramids and Pyramid Temple, along with a portion of Schiaparelli's eastern cemetery. Any future disputes were to be resolved by Inspector James Quibell, as per a letter from Burchard to Maspero. List of Egyptian pyramids. 1 Great Pyramid of Giza, also known as the Pyramid of Khufu or the Pyramid of Cheops. It is the largest and oldest of the 3 pyramids in the Giza necropolis. It was built during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu in the 26th century BC. 2 Pyramid of Khafre, the second largest pyramid in the Giza necropolis. It was built for Pharaoh Khafre, who was the son of Khufu. It is notable for its complex funerary complex and the iconic Sphinx statue located nearby. 3 Pyramid of Menkaur, the smallest of the 3 pyramids in the Giza necropolis. It was constructed for Pharaoh Menkaur. It is known for its beautifully preserved granite casing on the upper portion of the pyramid. 4 Bent Pyramid, located in Dahshur, south of Cairo. The bent pyramid is unique due to its distinct shape. It was built during the Old Kingdom for Pharaoh Sneferu and is characterized by a change in slope midway up the pyramid. 5 Red Pyramid, also located in Dahshur. The Red Pyramid is the 3rd largest pyramid in Egypt. It is called the Red Pyramid due to the reddish hue of its limestone. It is believed to be the first successful smooth-sided pyramid. 6. Pyramid of Djoser, located in Saqqara. The Pyramid of Djoser, or Step Pyramid, is one of the earliest large-scale stone monuments in Egypt. It was built for Pharaoh Djoser by his architect Imhotep and served as his tomb. 7. Pyramid of Amenemhat III, situated in Dashur. This pyramid was constructed during the Middle Kingdom for Pharaoh Amenemhat III. It has a unique internal structure and is surrounded by an enclosure wall. 8. Black Pyramid, found in Dashur. The Black Pyramid was built for Pharaoh Amenemhat III. It is believed to be the first pyramid to feature internal chambers and passages constructed of granite. 9. Pyramid of Unas, located in Saqqara. The Pyramid of Unas is the final resting place of Pharaoh Unas. It is known for its well-preserved pyramid texts, which represent some of the earliest religious compositions from ancient Egypt. 10. Pyramid of Pepi II, dated in Saqqara. This pyramid was built for Pharaoh Pepi II, who was one of the longest reigning rulers in ancient Egypt. It is one of the last pyramids constructed during the Old Kingdom. 11. Pyramid of Teti, situated in Saqqara. The Pyramid of Teti is the burial place of Pharaoh Teti, the first pharaoh of the 6th dynasty. It is known for its pyramid texts and intricate pyramid complex. 12. Pyramid of Senusret I, found in Lisht. The Pyramid of Senusret I was built for Pharaoh Senusret I, the second pharaoh of the 12th dynasty. It is notable for its unique construction techniques and well-preserved mortuary temple. 13. Pyramid of Amenemhat I, located in Lisht. This pyramid was constructed for Pharaoh Amenemhat I, the founder of the 12th dynasty. It is the southernmost royal pyramid in Egypt and exhibits a transition in pyramid design. 14. Pyramid of Merenri, situated in Saqqara. The Pyramid of Merenri is the burial place of Pharaoh Merenri, who was a ruler of the 6th dynasty. It is a relatively small pyramid and is notable for its unusual construction. 15. Pyramid of Djedkare-Sesi, found in Saqqara. This pyramid was built for Pharaoh Djedkare-Sesi, the penultimate pharaoh of the 5th dynasty. It is one of the most well-preserved pyramids from that period. 16. Pyramid of Amenemhat II, located in Dashur. The Pyramid of Amenemhat II was constructed for Pharaoh Amenemhat I, the third pharaoh of the 12th dynasty. It exhibits similarities to the Black Pyramid of Amenemhat III. 17. Pyramid of Sneferu-Midim Pyramid, situated in Midim. This pyramid is attributed to Pharaoh Sneferu, who was the founder of the 4th dynasty. It started as a step pyramid, but was later modified into a true pyramid. Immediate aftermath. This arrangement lasted until 1905, when, under the supervision of Schiaparelli and Francesco Ballerini, the Italian excavations ceased at Giza, as the Italians were more interested in sites which might yield more papyri. They turned their concession of the southern strip of the Western Cemetery over to the Americans under Reisner. Modern usage. In 1978, the Grateful Dead played a series of concerts later released as Rocking the Cradle, Egypt 1978. In 2007, Colombian singer Shakira performed at the complex to a crowd of approximately 100,000 people. The complex was used for the final draw of the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations and the 2021 World Men's Handball Championship. Egypt's Minister of Tourism unveiled plans for a $17 million revamp of the complex by the end of 2021. In order to boost tourism in Egypt, as well as make the site more accessible and tourist-friendly. According to Lonely Planet, the refurbishment includes a new visitors center, an environmentally friendly electric bus, a restaurant, the Nine Pyramids Lounge, as well as a cinema, public toilets, site-wide signage, food trucks, photo booths, and free Wi-Fi. The new facility is part of a wider plan to renovate the 4,500-year-old site. History: Old Kingdom. The archaeological evidence suggests that the Great Sphinx was created around 2500 BC for the pharaoh Khafre, the builder of the second pyramid at Giza. The Sphinx is a monolith carved from the bedrock of the plateau, which also served as the quarry for the pyramids and other monuments in the area. Egyptian geologist Farouk El-Baz has suggested that the head of the Sphinx may have been carved first, out of a natural yardang, i.e., a ridge of bedrock that had been sculpted by the wind. These can sometimes achieve shapes that resemble animals. El-Baz suggests that the moat or ditch around the Sphinx may have been quarried out later to allow for the creation of the full body of the sculpture. The stones cut from around the Sphinx's body were used to construct a temple in front of it. However, neither the enclosure nor the temple were ever completed, and the relative scarcity of Old Kingdom cultural material suggests that a Sphinx cult was not established at the time. Selim Hassan, writing in 1949 on recent excavations of the Sphinx enclosure, made note of this circumstance. Taking all things into consideration, it seems that we must give the credit of erecting this, the world's most wonderful statue, to Khafre. But always with this reservation, that there is not one single contemporary inscription which connects the Sphinx with Khafre. So sound as it may appear, we must treat the evidence as circumstantial, until such time as a lucky turn of the spade of the excavator will reveal to the world a definite reference to the erection of the Sphinx. In order to construct the temple, the northern perimeter wall of the Khafre Valley Temple had to be deconstructed. Hence, it follows that the Khafre funerary complex preceded the creation of the Sphinx and its temple. Furthermore, the angle and location of the south wall of the enclosure suggests the causeway connecting Khafre's pyramid and valley temple already existed before the Sphinx was planned. The lower base level of the Sphinx temple also indicates that it does not predate the valley temple. New Kingdom. Sometime around the First Intermediate Period, the Giza necropolis was abandoned, and drifting sand eventually buried the Sphinx up to its shoulders. The first documented attempt at an excavation dates to c. 1400 BC, when the young Thutmose IV 1401-1391 or 13,971,388 BC gathered a team, and, after much effort, managed to dig out the front paws, between which he erected a shrine that housed the dream stele, an inscribed granite slab, possibly a repurposed door lintel from one of Khafre's temples. When the stele was discovered, its lines of text were already damaged and incomplete. An excerpt reads, "The royal son, Thothmose, being arrived, while walking at midday, and seating himself under the shadow of this mighty god, was overcome by slumber and slept at the very moment when Ra is at the summit of heaven. He found that the majesty of this august god spoke to him with his own mouth, as a father speaks to his son, saying, 'Look upon me, contemplate me, O my son Thothmose. I am thy father, Harmachis Khopri Ra-Tum. I bestow upon thee the sovereignty over my domain, the supremacy over the living. Behold my actual condition, that thou mayest protect all my perfect limbs. The sand of the desert whereon I am laid has covered me. Save me, causing all that is in my heart to be executed.'" The stele of Thothmes IV, a translation. The dream stele associate the Sphinx with Khafre. However, this part of the text is not entirely intact, which we bring for him, oxen, and all the young vegetables. And we shall give praise to Wennefer, Kaf, the statue made for Adam Hor M. Akhet. Jason Colavito, who built the Sphinx. Egyptologist Thomas Young, finding the Kaf hieroglyphs in a damaged cartouche used to surround a royal name, inserted the glyph Ra to complete Khafre's name. When the stele was re-excavated in 1925, the lines of text referring to Kaf flacked off and were destroyed. Citation needed. Later, Ramesses II the Great 1279-1213 BC may have undertaken a second excavation. In the New Kingdom, the Sphinx became more specifically associated with the sun god Hor M. Akhet, Hellenized, Harmachis, or Horus, at the horizon. The pharaoh Amenhotep II 1427-1401, or 1397 BC built a temple to the northeast of the Sphinx nearly 1,000 years after its construction and dedicated it to the cult of Hor-M-Akhet. Greco-Roman period. In Greco-Roman times, Giza had become a tourist destination. Monuments were regarded as antiquities, and some Roman emperors visited the Sphinx out of curiosity and for political reasons. The Sphinx was cleared of sand again in the 1st century AD. In honor of Emperor Nero and the governor of Egypt, Tiberius Claudius Balbillus. A monumental stairway more than 12 meters 39 feet wide was erected, leading to a pavement in front of the paws of the Sphinx. At the top of the stairs, a podium was positioned that allowed a view into the Sphinx sanctuary. Farther back, another podium neighbored several more steps. The stairway was dismantled during the 193,130 excavations by Mylbaras. Pliny the Elder describes the face of the Sphinx being colored red and gives measurements for the statue. In front of these pyramids is the Sphinx, a still more wondrous object of art, but one upon which silence has been observed, as it is looked upon as a divinity by the people of the neighborhood. It is their belief that King Harmas was buried in it, and they will have it that it was brought there from a distance. The truth is, however, that it was hewn from the solid rock, and from a feeling of veneration, the face of the monster is colored red. The circumference of the head, measured round the forehead, is 102 feet, the length of the feet being 143, and the height, from the belly to the summit of the ast on the head, 62. A stela dated to 166 AD commemorates the restoration of the retaining walls surrounding the Sphinx. 32. The last emperor connected with the monument is Septimius Severus, around 200 AD. 33. With the downfall of Roman power, the Sphinx was once more engulfed by the sands. 34. Middle Ages edit. Some ancient non-Egyptians saw the Sphinx as a likeness of the god Horus. The cult of the Sphinx continued into medieval times. The Sabians of Harran saw it as the burial place of Hermes Trismegistus. Arab authors described the Sphinx as a talisman that guarded the area from the desert. 35. Al-Makrizi describes it as the talisman of the Nile that the locals believed the flood cycle depended upon. 36. Muhammad al-Idrisi stated that those wishing to obtain bureaucratic positions in the Egyptian government gave incense offering to the monument. 37. Early modern period edit. Over the centuries, writers and scholars have recorded their impressions and reactions upon seeing the Sphinx. The vast majority were concerned with the general description, often including a mixture of science, romance, and mystique. Citation needed. A typical citation needed description of the Sphinx by tourists and leisure travelers throughout the 19th and 20th century was made by John Lawson Stoddard. It is the antiquity of the Sphinx which thrills us as we look upon it, for in itself it has no charms. The desert's waves have risen to its breast, as if to wrap the monster in a winding sheet of gold. The face and head have been mutilated by Muslim fanatics. The mouth, the beauty of whose lips was once admired, is now expressionless, yet grand in its loneliness, veiled in the mystery of unnamed ages. The relic of Egyptian antiquity stands solemn and silent in the presence of the awful desert, symbol of eternity. Here it disputes with time the empire of the past, forever gazing on and on into a future which will still be distant when we, like all who have preceded us and looked upon its face, have lived our little lives and disappeared. 38. John L. Stoddard's lectures. From the 16th to the 19th centuries, European observers described the Sphinx having the face, neck, and breast of a woman. Examples included Johannes Helfferic 1579, George Sandys 1615, Johann Michael van Sleb 1677. Most early Western images were book illustrations in print form, elaborated by a professional engraver from either previous images available or some original drawing or sketch supplied by an author, and usually now lost. 7 years after visiting Giza, Anderthevet Cosmographie de Levant, 1556, described the Sphinx as the head of a colossus. caused to be made by Isis, daughter of Inachus, then so beloved of Jupiter. He, or his artist and engraver, pictured it as a curly-haired monster with a grassy dog collar. Athanasius Kircher, who never visited Egypt, depicted the Sphinx as a Roman statue. Torres Babel, 1679. Johannes Helfferich 1579. Sphinx is a pinched face, round-breasted woman with a straight-haired wig. George Sandys stated that the Sphinx was a harlot. Balthasar de Monconys interpreted the headdress as a kind of hairnet, while François de la Boulaye-Lagouz's Sphinx had a rounded hairdo with bulky collar. Richard Pococki's Sphinx was an adoption of Cornelis de Bruyn's drawing of 1698, featuring only minor changes, but is closer to the actual appearance of the Sphinx than anything previous. The print versions of Nordon's drawings for his Voyage d'Egypte et de Nubie, 1755, clearly show that the nose was missing. Modern excavations. In 1817, the first modern archaeological dig, supervised by the Italian Giovanni Battista Caviglia, uncovered the Sphinx's chest completely. In the beginning of the year 1887, the chest, the paws, the altar, and plateau were all made visible. Flights of steps were unearthed, and finally accurate measurements were taken of the great figures. The height from the lowest of the steps was found to be 100 feet, and the space between the paws was found to be 35 feet long and 10 feet wide. Here there was formerly an altar, and a stele of Thmosis IV was discovered, recording a dream in which he was ordered to clear away the sand that even then was gathering round the site of the Sphinx. 39. S. Rappaport, the Project Gutenberg eBook of History of Egypt from 330 B.C. to the present, Volume 12. One of the people working on clearing the sands from around the Great Sphinx was Hugues Gerbaud, a French director of the Antiquities Service. 40. Opinions of early Egyptologists. Edit. Early Egyptologists and excavators were of divided opinion regarding the age of the Sphinx and the associated temples. In 1857, Auguste Mariette, founder of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, unearthed the much later inventory stela estimated to be from the 26th dynasty, c. 664,525 BC, which tells how Khufu came upon the Sphinx, already buried in sand. Although certain tracks on the stela are likely accurate, 41, this passage is contradicted by archaeological evidence, thus considered to be late-period historical revisionism. 42, a purposeful fake, created by the local priests as an attempt to imbue the contemporary Isis temple with an ancient history it never had. I remain more convinced by the traditional argument of it being Khafre or the more recent theory of it being Khufu. Geologist Colin Reeder suggests that water runoff from the Giza Plateau is responsible for the differential erosion on the walls of the Sphinx enclosure, because the hydrological characteristics of the area were significantly changed by the quarries. He contends this suggests that the Sphinx likely predated the quarries and thus, the pyramids. He points towards the larger Cyclopean stones in part of the Sphinx temple, as well as the causeway alignment with the pyramids and the break in the quarries, as evidence that the pyramids took the alignment with some pre-existing structure, such as the Sphinx, into consideration when they were constructed, and that the Sphinx temple was built in two distinct phases. He contends that such erosion could have occurred relatively rapidly, and suggests that the Sphinx was no more than a few centuries older than present archaeology would suggest, suggesting a late predynastic or early dynastic origin, when ancient Egyptians already were known to be capable of sophisticated masonry. Recent restorations. In 1931, engineers of the Egyptian government repaired the head of the Sphinx. Part of its headdress had fallen off in 1926 due to erosion, which had also cut deeply into its neck. This questionable repair was by the addition of a concrete collar between the headdress and the neck, creating an altered profile. Many renovations to the stone base and raw rock body were done in the 1980s, and then redone in the 1990s. Degradation and violation. The nummulitic limestone of the area consists of layers which offer differing resistance to erosion, mostly caused by wind and wind-blown sand, leading to the uneven degradation apparent in the Sphinx's body. The lowest part of the body, including the legs, is solid rock. The body of the animal up to its neck is fashioned from softer layers that have suffered considerable disintegration. The layer in which the head was sculpted is much harder. A number of dead-end shafts are known to exist within and below the body of the great Sphinx, most likely dug by treasure hunters and tomb robbers. Missing nose. Examination of the Sphinx's face shows that long rods or chisels were hammered into the nose area, one down from the bridge and another beneath the nostril, then used to pry the nose off towards the south, resulting in the 1-meter-wide nose still being lost. To date, many folktales exist regarding the destruction of its nose, aiming to provide an answer as to where it went or what happened to it. One tale erroneously attributes it to cannonballs fired by the army of Napoleon Bonaparte. This is considered false, since drawings of the Sphinx by Frederick Louis Norden in 1737 already show the nose missing, predating Napoleon's arrival by 60 years. The damaged nose has also been attributed by some 10th-century Arab authors, stating that it was a result of iconoclastic attacks. Besides this, there was also mention of the damage being the work of the Mamluks in the 14th century. According to Ibn Qadi Shuba, Muhammad ibn Sadiq ibn al-Muhammad al-Tibrizi al-Masri d. 1384 desecrated the Sphinx of Qanatir al-Siba, built by Sultan Baybars. The Arab historian al-Makars, writing in the early 15th century, attributes the loss of the nose to Muhammad Saim al-Dar, a Sufi Muslim from the Khanqa of Sa'id al-Suwada in 1378, who found local peasants making offerings to the Sphinx in the hope of increasing their harvest, and therefore defaced the Sphinx in an act of iconoclasm. According to al-Makars, many people living in the area believed that the increased sand covering the Giza Plateau was retribution for El-Dar's act of defacement. Almi Nufi 14431527 meanwhile mentioned that the Alexandrian Crusade in 1365 was divine retribution for Muhammad Saim al-Dar's breaking off the nose of a Sphinx beard. In addition to the lost nose, a ceremonial pharaonic beard is thought to have been attached. Although this may have been added in later periods, after the original construction, Egyptologist Vasil Dobrov has suggested that had the beard been an original part of the Sphinx, it would have damaged the chin of the statue upon falling. The lack of visible damage supports his theory that the beard was a later addition. Residues of red pigment are visible on areas of the Sphinx's face, and traces of yellow and blue pigment have also been found elsewhere on the Sphinx, leading Mark Lehner to suggest that the monument was once decked out in gaudy comic book colors. However, as with the case of many ancient monuments, the pigments and colors have since deteriorated, resulting in the yellow or beige appearance it has today. Holes and tunnels. Hole in the Sphinx's head. Johann Helffrich visited the Sphinx during his travels in 15,651,566. He describes that a priest went into the head of the Sphinx, and when he spoke, it was as if the Sphinx itself was speaking. Many New Kingdom stelae depict the Sphinx wearing a crown. If it in fact existed, the hole could have been the anchoring point for it. Mile Barras closed the hole with a metal hatch in 1926. Pering's hole. Howard Weiss directed Pering in 1837 to drill a tunnel in the back of the Sphinx, just behind the head. The boring rods became stuck at a depth of 27 feet 8 (2 m). Attempts to blast the rods free caused further damage. The hole was cleared in 1978. Among the rubble was a fragment of the Sphinx's NEM's headdress. Major fissure. A major natural fissure in the bedrock cuts through the waist of the Sphinx, first excavated by Auguste Mariette in 1853. At the top of the back it measures up to 2 meters 6 ft in width. Barras, in 1926, sealed the sides and roofed it with iron bars, limestone, and cement, and installed an iron trapdoor at the top. The sides of the fissure might have been artificially squared. However, the bottom is a regular bedrock, about 1 meter 3 feet above the outside floor. A very narrow crack continues deeper. Rump passage. In 1926, the Sphinx was cleared of sand under direction of Barras, which revealed an opening to a tunnel at floor level at the north side of the rump. It was subsequently closed by masonry veneer and nearly forgotten. More than 50 years later, the existence of the passage was recalled by 3 elderly men who had worked during the clearing as basket carriers. This led to the rediscovery and excavation of the rump passage in 1980. The passage consists of an upper and a lower section, which are angled roughly 90 degrees to each other. The upper part ascends to a height of 4 meters 13 feet above the ground floor at a northwest direction. It runs between masonry veneer and the core body of the Sphinx and ends in a niche 1 meter 3 feet wide and 1.8 meters 9 feet high. The ceiling of the niche consists of modern cement, which likely spilled down from the filling of the gap between masonry and core bedrock, some 3 meters 8 feet above. The lower part descends steeply into the bedrock toward northeast, for a distance of approximately 4 meters 13 feet and a depth of 5 meters 16 feet. It terminated in a cul-de-sac pit at groundwater level. At the entrance, it is 1.3 meters 3 feet wide, narrowing to about 1.07 meters 5 feet towards the end. Among the sand and stone fragments, a piece of tinfoil and the base of a modern ceramic water jar was found. The clogged bottom contained modern fill. Among it, more tinfoil, modern cement, and a pair of shoes. It is possible that the entire passage was cut top down, beginning high up on the rump, and that the current access point at floor level was made at a later date. Weiss noted in his diary February 27 and 28, 1837 that he was boring near the tail, which indicates him as the creator of the passage, as no other tunnel has been identified at this location. Another interpretation is that the shaft is of ancient origin, perhaps an exploratory tunnel or an unfinished tomb shaft. Niche in northern flank. A 1925 photograph shows a man standing below floor level in a niche in the Sphinx's core body. It was closed during the 19,251,926 restorations. Gap under southern large masonry box. Another hole might have been at floor level in the large masonry box on the south side of the Sphinx. Space behind dream stele. The space behind the dream stele, between the paws of the Sphinx, was covered by an iron beam and cement roof, which was fitted with an iron trapdoor. Keyhole shaft. At the ledge of the Sphinx enclosure, a square shaft is located opposite the northern hind paw. It was cleared during excavation in 1978 by Hawass and measures 1.42 by 1.06 meters 7 by 3.5 feet and about 2 meters 6 feet deep. Lehner interprets the shaft to be an unfinished tomb and named it keyhole shaft because of cuttings in the ledge above the shaft that are shaped like the lower part of a traditional Victorian-era keyhole upside down. Pseudo-history. Numerous ideas have been suggested to explain or reinterpret the origin and identity of the Sphinx that lack sufficient evidential support and/or are contradicted by such, and are therefore considered part of pseudo-history and pseudo-archaeology. Ancient astronauts or Atlantis. The Sphinx is oriented from west to east, towards the rising sun, in accordance with ancient Egyptian solar cult. The Orion correlation theory posits that it was instead aligned to face the constellation of Leo during the vernal equinox around 10,500 BC. The idea is considered pseudo-archaeology by academia, because no textual or archaeological evidence supports this to be the reason for the orientation of the Sphinx. The Sphinx water erosion hypothesis contends that the main type of weathering evident on the enclosure walls of the Great Sphinx could only have been caused by prolonged and extensive rainfall, and must therefore predate the time of the pharaoh Khafre. The hypothesis was championed by Renshaw, D. Lubitsch, John Anthony West, and geologist Robert M. Schoch. The theory is considered pseudo-archaeology by mainstream scholarship, due to archaeological, climatological, and geological evidence to the contrary. There is a long history of speculation about hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx by esoteric figures such as H. Spencer Lewis. Edgar Cayce specifically predicted in the 1930s that a Hall of Records containing knowledge from Atlantis would be discovered under the Sphinx in 1998. His prediction fueled much of the fringe speculation that surrounded the Sphinx in the 1990s, which lost momentum when the hall was not found when predicted. Author Robert K. G. Temple proposes that the Sphinx was originally a statue of the jackal god Anubis, the god of funerals, and that its face was recarved in the likeness of a Middle Kingdom pharaoh Menemhet II. Temple bases his identification on the style of the eye makeup and style of the pleats on the headdress. Racial characteristics. Until the early 20th century, it was suggested that the face of the Sphinx had Negroid characteristics as part of the now outdated historical race concepts. Historical development. Preceded by assumed earlier sites in the Eastern Sahara, tumuli with megalithic monuments. Developed as early as 4700 BC in the Saharan region of Niger. Fekri Hassan 2002 indicates that the megalithic monuments in the Saharan region of Niger and the Eastern Sahara may have served as antecedents for the mastabas and pyramids of ancient Egypt. During predynastic Egypt, tumuli were present at various locations, for example, Naqada, Helwan. From the time of the early dynastic period c. 31,502,686 BC, Egyptians with sufficient means were buried in bench-like structures known as mastabas. At Saqqara, Mastaba 3808, dating from the latter part of the First Dynasty, was discovered to contain a large, independently built step, pyramid-like structure enclosed within the outer palace facade. Mastaba. Archaeological remains and inscriptions suggest there may have been other similar structures dating to this period. The first historically documented Egyptian pyramid is attributed by Egyptologists to the 3rd dynasty, Pharaoh Djoser. Although Egyptologists often credit his vizier Imhotep as its architect, the dynastic Egyptians themselves, contemporaneously or in numerous later dynastic writings about the character, did not credit him with either designing Djoser's pyramid or the invention of stone architecture. The Pyramid of Djoser was first built as a square mastaba-like structure, which as a rule were known to otherwise be rectangular, and was expanded several times by way of a series of accretion layers to produce the stepped pyramid structure we see today. Egyptologists believe this design served as a gigantic stairway by which the soul of the deceased pharaoh could ascend to the heavens. Though other pyramids were attempted in the 3rd dynasty, after Djoser, it was the 4th dynasty, transitioning from the step pyramid to true pyramid shape, which gave rise to the Great Pyramids of Meidum, Dahshur, and Giza. The last pharaoh of the 4th dynasty, Shepseskaf, did not build a pyramid, and beginning in the 5th dynasty, for various reasons, the massive scale and precision of construction decreased significantly, leaving these later pyramids smaller, less well built, and often hastily constructed. By the end of the 6th dynasty, pyramid building had largely ended, and it was not until the Middle Kingdom that large pyramids were built again, though instead of stone, wood brick was the main construction material. Long after the end of Egypt's own pyramid building period, a burst of pyramid building occurred in what is present-day Sudan. After much of Egypt came under the rule of the Kingdom of Kush, which was then based at Napata. Napatan rule, known as the 25th dynasty, lasted from 750 BCE to 664 BCE. Al-Aziz Uthman 11711198, the second Ayyubid Sultan of Egypt, tried to destroy the Giza pyramid complex. He gave up after only damaging the Pyramid of Menkaure because the task proved too large. Pyramid symbolism. The shape of Egyptian pyramids is thought to represent the primordial mound from which the Egyptians believed the earth was created. The shape of a pyramid is also thought to be representative of the descending rays of the sun, and most pyramids were faced with polished, highly reflective white limestone, in order to give them a brilliant appearance when viewed from a distance. Pyramids were often also named in ways that referred to solar luminescence. For example, the formal name of the Bent Pyramid at Dahshur was the Southern Shining Pyramid, and that of Senusret II at El Lahoun was Senusret Shines. While it is generally agreed that pyramids were burial monuments, there is continued disagreement on the particular theological principles that might have given rise to them. One suggestion is that they were designed as a type of resurrection machine. The Egyptians believed the dark area of the night sky, around which the stars appear to revolve, was the physical gateway into the heavens. One of the narrow shafts that extend from the main burial chamber through the entire body of the Great Pyramid points directly towards the center of this part of the sky. This suggests the pyramid may have been designed to serve as a means to magically launch the deceased pharaoh's soul directly into the abode of the gods. All Egyptian pyramids were built on the west bank of the Nile, which, as the site of the setting sun, was associated with the realm of the dead in Egyptian mythology. Number and location of pyramids. In 1842, Carl Richard Lepsius produced the first modern list of pyramids known as the Lepsius List of Pyramidsen, which he counted 67. A great many more have since been discovered. At least 118 Egyptian pyramids have been identified. The location of Pyramid 29, which Lepsius called the Headless Pyramid, was lost for a second time when the structure was buried by desert sands after Lepsius's survey. It was found again only during an archaeological dig conducted in 2008. Many pyramids are in a poor state of preservation or buried by desert sands. If visible at all, they may appear as little more than mounds of rubble. As a consequence, archaeologists are continuing to identify and study previously unknown pyramid structures. The most recent pyramid to be discovered was that of Neith, a wife of Teti. All of Egypt's pyramids, except the small 3rd Dynasty pyramid at Zayat el-Mayatin, are sited on the west bank of the Nile, and most are grouped together in a number of pyramid fields. The most important of these are listed geographically, from north to south, below. Abu Rosh. Abu Rosh is the site of Egypt's most northerly pyramid, other than the ruins of Lepsius Pyramid No. 1, the mostly ruined pyramid of Djedefre, son and successor of Khufu. Originally, it was thought that this pyramid had never been completed. But the current archaeological consensus is that not only was it completed, but that it was originally about the same size as the Pyramid of Menkaure, which would have placed it among the half-dozen or so largest pyramids in Egypt. Its location adjacent to a major crossroads made it an easy source of stone. Quarrying, which began in Roman times, has left little apart from about 15 courses of stone superimposed upon the natural hillock that formed part of the pyramid's core. A small adjacent satellite pyramid is in a better state of preservation. Giza. The Giza Plateau is the location of the Pyramid of Khufu, also known as the Great Pyramid and the Pyramid of Cheops. The somewhat smaller Pyramid of Khafre or Chephren, the relatively modest-sized Pyramid of Menkaure or Mycerinus, along with a number of smaller satellite edifices known as Queen's Pyramids, and the Great Sphinx of Giza. Of the three, only Khafre's pyramid retains part of its original polished limestone casing, near its apex. This pyramid appears larger than the adjacent Khufu pyramid by virtue of its more elevated location, and the steeper angle of inclination of its construction. It is, in fact, smaller in both height and volume. The Giza Pyramid Complex has been a popular tourist destination since antiquity, and was popularized in Hellenistic times when the Great Pyramid was listed by Antipater of Sidon as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Today, it is the only one of those wonders still in existence. Zayet El Aryan. This site, halfway between Giza and Abuzer, is the location for two unfinished Old Kingdom pyramids. The northern structure's owner is believed to be Pharaoh Nebka, while the southern structure, known as the Layer Pyramid, may be attributable to the 3rd dynasty Pharaoh Khaba, a close successor of Sekhemkhet. If this attribution is correct, Khaba's short reign could explain the seemingly unfinished state of this step pyramid. Today it stands around 17 meters 56 ft high. Had it been completed, it is likely to have exceeded 40 meters 130 ft. Abuzer. There are a total of 14 pyramids at this site, which served as the main royal necropolis during the 5th dynasty. The quality of construction of the Abuzer pyramids is inferior to those of the 4th dynasty perhaps, signaling a decrease in royal power or a less vibrant economy. They are smaller than their predecessors and are built of low-quality local limestone. The 3 major pyramids are those of Niuserre, which is also the best preserved, Neferirkare, Khafre, and Sahure. The site is also home to the incomplete pyramid of Neferfri. Most of the major pyramids at Abuzer were built using similar construction techniques, comprising a rubble core surrounded by steps of mud bricks with a limestone outer casing. Saqqara. Major pyramids located here include the Pyramid of Djoser, generally identified as the world's oldest substantial monumental structure to be built of dressed stone, the Pyramid of Userkaf, the Pyramid of Teti, and the Pyramid of Menkaure, dating to the first intermediate period of Egypt. Also at Saqqara is the Pyramid of Unas, which retains a pyramid causeway that is one of the best preserved in Egypt. Together with the Pyramid of Userkaf, this pyramid was the subject of one of the earliest known restoration attempts, conducted by Khemweset, a son of Ramesses II. Saqqara is also the location of the incomplete step pyramid of Djoser's successor, Sekhemkhet, known as the Buried Pyramid. Archaeologists believe that had this pyramid been completed, it would have been larger than Djoser's. South of the main pyramid field at Saqqara is a second collection of later, smaller pyramids, including those of Pepi I, Djedkare Isesi, Merenri, Pepi II, and Ibai. Most of these are in a poor state of preservation. The 4th dynasty pharaoh Shepseskaf either did not share an interest in or have the capacity to undertake pyramid construction like his predecessors. His tomb, which is also sited at South Saqqara, was instead built as an unusually large mastaba and offering temple complex. It is commonly known as the Mastabat al-Firaun. A previously unknown pyramid was discovered in North Saqqara in late 2008. Believed to be the tomb of Teti's mother, it currently stands approximately 5 meters 16 ft high, although the original height was closer to 14 meters 46 ft. Dahshur. This area is arguably the most important pyramid field in Egypt outside Giza and Saqqara. Although until 1996, the site was inaccessible due to its location within a military base and was relatively unknown outside archaeological circles. The southern pyramid of Sneferu, commonly known as the Bent Pyramid, is believed to be the first Egyptian pyramid, intended by its builders to be a true smooth-sided pyramid from the outset. The earlier pyramid at Midim had smooth sides in its finished state, but it was conceived and built as a step pyramid, before having its steps filled in and concealed beneath a smooth outer casing of dressed stone. As a true smooth-sided structure, the Bent Pyramid was only a partial success, but a unique, visually imposing one. It is also the only major Egyptian pyramid to retain a significant proportion of its original smooth outer limestone casing intact. As such, it serves as the best contemporary example of how the ancient Egyptians intended their pyramids to look. Several kilometers to the north of the Bent Pyramid is the last and most successful of the 3 pyramids constructed during the reign of Sneferu. The Red Pyramid is the world's first successfully completed smooth-sided pyramid. Also at Dahshur is one of 2 pyramids built by Amenemhat III, known as the Black Pyramid, as well as a number of small, mostly ruined subsidiary pyramids. Mazhumul, located to the south of Dashur. Several mud brick pyramids were built in this area. In the late Middle Kingdom, perhaps for Amenemhat IV and Sobek-Neferu. Lisht, two major pyramids are known to have been built at Lisht, those of Amenemhat I and his son, Senusret I. The latter is surrounded by the ruins of 10 smaller subsidiary pyramids. One of these subsidiary pyramids is known to be that of Amenemhat's cousin, Kaaba II. The site, which is in the vicinity of the oasis of the Fayyum, midway between Dashur and Maidum, and about 100 kilometers south of Cairo, is believed to be in the vicinity of the ancient city of Itwi, the precise location of which remains unknown, which served as the capital of Egypt during the 12th dynasty. Maidum, the pyramid at Maidum is one of 3 constructed during the reign of Snefru, and is believed by some to have been started by that pharaoh's father and predecessor, Huni. However, that attribution is uncertain, as no record of Huni's name has been found at the site. It was constructed as a step pyramid, and then later converted into the first, true, smooth-sided pyramid, when the steps were filled in and an outer casing added. The pyramid suffered several catastrophic collapses in ancient and medieval times. Medieval Arab writers described it as having 7 steps, although today only the 3 uppermost of these remain, giving the structure its odd, tower-like appearance. The hill on which the pyramid is situated is not a natural landscape feature. It is the small mountain of debris created when the lower courses and outer casing of the pyramid gave way. Hawara, Amenemhat III, was the last powerful ruler of the 12th dynasty, and the pyramid he built at Hawara near the Fayyum is believed to post-date the so-called Black Pyramid built by the same ruler at Dashur. It is the Hawara pyramid that is believed to have been Amenemhet's final resting place. El Lahun, the pyramid of Senusret II at El Lahun, is the southernmost royal tomb pyramid structure in Egypt. Its builders reduced the amount of work necessary to construct it by using as its foundation and core a 12-meter-high natural limestone hill. El-Kuru, Pi, the king of Kush who became the first ruler of the 25th dynasty, built a pyramid at El-Kuru. He was the first Egyptian pharaoh to be buried in a pyramid in centuries. Nuri, Taharka, a Kushite ruler of the 25th dynasty, built his pyramid at Nuri. It was the largest in the area North Sudan. Construction techniques. Constructing the pyramids involved moving huge quantities of stone. While most blocks came from nearby quarries, special stones were transported on great barges from distant locations. For instance, white limestone from Torah and granite from Aswan. In 2013, papyri, named Diary of Merer, were discovered at an ancient Egyptian harbor at the Red Sea coast. They are logbooks written over 4,500 years ago by an official with the title inspector, who documented the transport of white limestone from the Torah quarries, along the Nile River, to the Great Pyramid of Giza, the tomb of the pharaoh Khufu. It is possible that quarried blocks were then transported to the construction site by wooden sleds, with sand in front of the sled wetted to reduce friction. Droplets of water created bridges between the grains of sand, helping them stick together. Workers cut the stones close to the construction site, as indicated by the numerous finds of cutting tools. The finished blocks were placed on the pre-prepared foundations. The foundations were leveled using a rough square level, water trenches, and experienced surveyors. Egyptian pyramid construction techniques. Egyptian pyramid construction techniques are the controversial subject of many hypotheses. These techniques seem to have developed over time. Later pyramids were not constructed in the same way as earlier ones. Most of the construction hypotheses are based on the belief that huge stones were carved from quarries with copper chisels, and these blocks were then dragged and lifted into position. Disagreements chiefly concern the methods used to move and place the stones. In addition to the many unresolved arguments about the construction techniques, there have been disagreements as to the kind of workforce used. The Greeks, many years after the event, believed that the pyramids were built by slave labor. Archaeologists now believe that the Great Pyramid of Giza, at least, was built by tens of thousands of skilled workers who camped near the pyramids and worked for a salary or as a form of tax payment, levy, until the construction was completed, pointing to workers' cemeteries discovered in 1990 for the Middle Kingdom Pyramid of Amenemhat II. There is evidence from the Enel Stone of the King that foreigners from Canaan were employed. A number of pseudoscientific theories have been put forth to explain how the pyramids were built. Historical hypotheses. Writings of Herodotus and Diodorus Siculus. The unknowns of pyramid construction chiefly center on the question of how the blocks were moved up the superstructure. There is no known accurate historical or archaeological evidence that definitively resolves the question. Therefore, most discussion on construction methods involves functional possibilities that are supported by limited historical and archaeological evidence. The first historical accounts of the construction of these monuments came centuries after the era of pyramid construction, by Herodotus in the 5th century BC and Diodorus Siculus in the 1st century BC. Herodotus's account claims that the Egyptians used a machine now commonly referred to as the Herodotus machine, stating, "This pyramid was made like stairs, which some call steps and others tiers." When this, its first form, was completed, the workmen used short wooden logs as levers to raise the rest of the stones. They heaved up the blocks from the ground onto the first tier of steps. When the stone had been raised, it was set on another lever that stood on the first tier, and the lever again used to lift it from this tier to the next. It may be that there was a new lever on each tier of steps, or perhaps there was only one lever, quite portable, which they carried up to each tier in turn. I leave this uncertain, as both possibilities were mentioned. But this is certain, that the upper part of the pyramid was finished off first, then the next below it, and last of all, the base and the lowest part. Diodorus Siculus's account states, and it said the stone was transported a great distance from Arabia, and that the edifices were raised by means of earthen ramps, since machines for lifting had not yet been invented in those days. And most surprising, it is, that although such large structures were raised in an area surrounded by sand, no trace remains of either ramps or the dressing of the stones, so that it seems not the result of the patient labor of men, but rather as if the whole complex were set down entire upon the surrounding sand by some god. Now, Egyptians try to make a marvel of these things, alleging that the ramps were made of salt and natron, and that, when the river was turned against them, it melted them clean away, and obliterated their every trace without the use of human labor. But in truth, it most certainly was not done this way. Rather, the same multitude of workmen who raised the mounds returned the entire mass again to its original place. For they say that 360,000 men were constantly employed in the prosecution of their work. Yet the entire edifice was hardly finished, at the end of 20 years. Diodorus Siculus's description of the shipment of the stone from Arabia is correct, since the term Arabia, in those days, implied the land between the Nile and the Red Sea, where the limestone blocks have been transported from quarries across the river Nile. Materials. 3rd through 5th dynasties. During the earliest period, pyramids were constructed wholly of stone. Locally quarried limestone was the material of choice for the main body of these pyramids, while a higher quality of limestone quarried at Torah near modern Cairo was used for the outer casing. Granite, quarried near Aswan, was used to construct some architectural elements, including the portcullis, a type of gate, and the roofs and walls of the burial chamber. Occasionally, granite was used in the outer casing as well, such as in the Pyramid of Menkaure. In the early pyramids, the layers of stone called courses forming the pyramid body were laid sloping inwards. However, this configuration was found to be less stable than simply stacking the stones horizontally on top of each other. The bent pyramid at Dahshur seems to indicate acceptance of a new technique, at a transition between these two building techniques. Its lower section is built of sloping courses, while in its upper section the stones are laid horizontally. Middle Kingdom and onward. During the Middle Kingdom, pyramid construction techniques changed again. Most pyramids built then were little more than mountains of mud brick encased in a veneer of polished limestone. In several cases, later pyramids were built on top of natural hills to further reduce the volume of material needed in their construction. The materials and methods of construction used in the earliest pyramids have ensured their survival in a generally much better state of preservation than for the pyramid monuments. Mortar. The stones forming the core of the pyramids were roughly cut, especially in the Great Pyramid. To fill the gaps, huge quantities of gypsum and rubble were needed. The filling has almost no binding properties, but it was necessary to stabilize the construction. To make the gypsum mortar, it had to be dehydrated by heating, which requires large quantities of wood. According to Egyptologists, the findings of both the 1984 and 1995 David H. Koch Pyramids radiocarbon projects may suggest that Egypt had to strip its forest and scrap every bit of wood it had to build the pyramids of Giza and other even earlier 4th dynasty pyramids. Carbon dating samples from core blocks and other materials revealed that dates from the 1984 study averaged 374 years earlier than currently accepted, and the 1995 dating averaging 100,200 years. As suggested by team members, we thought that it was unlikely that the pyramid builders consistently used centuries-old wood as fuel in preparing mortar. The 1984 results left us with too little data to conclude that the historical chronology of the Old Kingdom was wrong by nearly 400 years, but we considered this at least a possibility. Egyptologists propose that the old wood problem is responsible for the discrepancy, claiming the earlier dates were possibly derived from recycling large amounts of centuries-old wood and other earlier materials. Quarrying. There is good information concerning the location of the quarries. Some of the tools used to cut stone in the quarries, transportation of the stone to the monument, leveling the foundation, and leveling the subsequent tiers of the developing superstructure. Workmen probably used copper chisels, drills, and saws to cut softer stone, such as most of the limestone. The harder stones, such as granite, granodiorite, syenite, and basalt, cannot be cut with copper tools alone. Instead, they were worked with time-consuming methods like pounding with dolerite, drilling, and sawing with the aid of an abrasive, such as quartz sand. This occurred in a process known as sand abrasion. Blocks were transported by sledge, likely lubricated by water. Leveling the foundation may have been accomplished by use of water-filled trenches, as suggested by Mark Lenner and I.E.S. Edwards, or through the use of a crude square level and experienced surveyors. Transport of stone blocks. One of the major problems faced by the early pyramid builders was the need to move huge quantities of stone. The 12th dynasty tomb of Jehutihot has an illustration of 172 men pulling an alabaster statue of him on a sledge. The statue is estimated to weigh 60 tons. And Dennis Stocks estimated that 45 workers would be required to start moving a 16,300 kilograms 35900 lb. 16.3 t lubricated block, or 8 workers to move a 2,750 kilograms 6060 lb. 2.75 t block. Dick Perry has suggested a method for rolling the stones, using a cradle-like machine that had been excavated in various New Kingdom temples. 4 of those objects could be fitted around a block, so it could be rolled easily. Experiments done by the Obayashi Corporation, with concrete blocks 0.8 meters 2f7 in square by 1.6 meters 5f3 in long, and weighing 2.5 tons to 500 gg, 5,500 lb, showed how 18 men could drag the block over a 1 in 4 incline ramp at a rate of 18 meters per minute 1 feet per second. This idea was previously described by John Bush in 1977 and is mentioned in the closing remarks section of Perry's book. Vitruvius in De Architectura described a similar method for moving irregular weights. It is still not known whether the Egyptians used this method, but the experiments indicate it could have worked using stones of this size. Egyptologists generally accept this for the 2.5-ton blocks mostly used, but do not agree over the methods used for the 15-plus ton and several 70 to 80-ton blocks. The Diary of Merer, logbooks written more than 4,500 years ago by an Egyptian official, and found in 2013 by a French archaeology team under the direction of Pierre Talat in a cave in Wadi el Jarf, describes the transportation of limestone blocks from the quarries at Tora to Giza by boat. Ramps. Most Egyptologists acknowledge that ramps are the most tenable of the methods to raise the blocks. Yet they acknowledge that it is an incomplete method that must be supplemented by another device. Archaeological evidence for the use of ramps has been found at the Great Pyramid of Giza and other pyramids. The method most accepted for assisting ramps is levering. The archaeological record gives evidence of only small ramps and inclined causeways, not something that could have been used to construct even a majority of the monument. To add to the uncertainty, there is considerable evidence demonstrating that non-standardized or ad hoc construction methods were used in pyramid construction. Therefore, there are many proposed ramps, and there is a considerable amount of discrepancy regarding what type of ramp was used to build the pyramids. One of the widely discredited ramping methods is the large straight ramp, and it is routinely discredited on functional grounds for its massive size, lack of archaeological evidence, huge labor cost, and other problems. Other ramps serve to correct these problems of ramp size, yet either run into critiques of functionality and limited archaeological evidence. There are zigzagging ramps, straight ramps using the incomplete part of the superstructure. Arnold 1991. Spiraling ramps supported by the superstructure, and spiraling ramps leaning on the monument as a large accretion are proposed. Mark Lehner speculated that a spiraling ramp, beginning in the stone quarry to the southeast and continuing around the exterior of the pyramid, may have been used. However, spiral ramps would have covered the building for decades fully, and would not allow the regular layout of the exact pyramid square in equal distance, each base cornerstone, as the only method to keep the exact geometric shape of the edges and side mantles. The stone blocks may have been drawn on sleds along the ramps, lubricated by water, as a recent study shows that the challenge was not just to account for the route the transported stones had to take, but to account for the size and frequency of stones being moved, circa 1 ton being put in place every 23 minutes by human draw teams on a ramp of maximum 10, to enable building of the Great Pyramid within 30 years. The special case of the pyramid extensions E2 and E3 in Matum of ring-shaped extensions, only 5 meters wide around the previous building core, shows the ramp system was effective and small in volume, which applies for tangential ramps of 10 cubits or 5 meters width. The challenge was the geometry of the pyramid that provides shorter side lengths the higher the building grows, increases the necessity to turn maneuvers, and allows less space for ramps leaning on the masonry. The slope change of the bent pyramid is probably the result of the discovery. This cannot be solved with steep gradients. Essential was also the effective organization of the building site by a module that allows the work division of the teams along plots, and the transport causeways between ramp and workplace, including the return of pulling crew and sleds down, probably by a second ramp system. The problem of building the mantle at the ramp arrival point could be solved by bypass systems. Levering. Levering methods are considered to be the most tenable solution to complement ramping methods, partially due to Herodotus's description, and partially to the shaduf, a lever-enabled irrigation device first depicted in Egypt during the New Kingdom, and found concomitantly with the Old Kingdom in Mesopotamia. In Lehner's 1997, 222 point of view, levers should be employed to lift the top 3% of the material of the superstructure. It is important to note that the top 4% of this material comprises 13 of the total height of the monument. In other words, in Lehner's view, levers should be employed to lift a small amount of material and a great deal of vertical height of the monument. In the milieu of levering methods, there are those that lift the block incrementally, as in repeatedly prying up alternating sides of the block and inserting wooden or stone shims to gradually move the stone up one course. And there are other methods that use a larger lever to move the block up one course in one lifting procedure. Since the discussion of construction techniques to lift the blocks attempts to resolve a gap in the archaeological and historical record, with a plausible functional explanation, the following examples by Eiler, Keeble, and Hussey Palos list experimentally tested methods. Eiler's method 1985, 1987 is an incremental method and, in the Nova experiment 1992, used wooden shims, or cribbing. Eiler was able to lift a block up one tier in approximately 1 hour and 30 minutes. Peter Hodges's and Julian Keeble's method is similar to Eiler's method and instead used small manufactured concrete blocks as shims, wooden pallets, and a pit where their experimental tests were performed. Keeble was able to perform his method in approximately 2 minutes. Scott Hussey Palos's 2005 method uses a simple levering device to lift a block up a course in one movement. This method was tested with materials of less strength than historical analogs, tested with materials weaker than those available in ancient Egypt, a factor of safety of 2, and lifted a 2,500-pound block up one course in under a minute. This method is presented as a levering device to work complementary with Mark Lehner's idea of a combined ramp and levering techniques. Harbors. Egyptians used the now disappeared branch of the Nile to transport the tons of construction materials. A 2012 study led by geographer Haider Shisha at Aix-Marseille University proposed that the former waterscapes and higher river levels around 4,500 years ago facilitated the construction of the Giza Pyramid complex. The Nile's present waterways have receded too far from the pyramid sites to be of use. Pyramid building experiments, Yoshimura. In 1978, Nippon TV funded the pyramid building project conceived by archaeologist Sayuki Yoshimura. It was originally planned as a 1:5 scale model of the Great Pyramid. Because of the limited budget, the size had to be drastically reduced when the price of limestone rose as the project gained publicity. A concrete foundation had to be poured as the selected site offered no bedrock basis. With the help of 2 cranes and a forklift, the pyramid was built to reach a height of 11 meters 36 ft, with a 15 meters 49 ft base. The structure was ultimately dismantled and hauled away. Nova. In 1992, Mark Lehner and stonemason Roger Hopkins conducted a 3-week pyramid building experiment for a Nova television episode. They built a pyramid 6 meters 20 ft high by 9 meters 30 ft wide, consisting of a total of 162 cubic meters 570 cuf, or about 405 tons. It was made out of 186 stones weighing an average of 2.2 tons each. 12 quarrymen carved 186 stones in 22 days, and the structure was erected using 44 men. They used iron hammers, chisels, and levers. This is a modern shortcut, as the ancient Egyptians were limited to using copper and later bronze and wood. But Lehner and Hopkins did experiments with copper tools, noting that they were adequate for the job in hand, provided that additional manpower was available to constantly resharpen the ancient tools. They estimated they would have needed around 20 extra men for this maintenance. Another shortcut taken was the use of a front-end loader or forklift truck. But modern machinery was not used to finish the construction. They used levers to lift the capstone to a height of 20 feet 6, 1 m. 4 or 5 men were able to use levers on stones less than 1 ton to flip them over and transport them by rolling, but larger stones had to be towed. Lehner and Hopkins found that by putting the stones on wooden sledges and sliding the sledges on wooden tracks, they were able to tow a 2-ton stone with 12 to 20 men. The wood for these sledges and tracks would have to have been imported from Lebanon, at great cost, since there was little, if any, wood in ancient Egypt. While the builders failed to duplicate the precise jointing created by the ancient Egyptians, Hopkins was confident that this could have been achieved with more practice. Great Pyramid. Some research suggests other estimates to the accepted workforce size. For instance, physicist Kurt Mendelsohn calculated that the workforce may have been 50,000 men at most, while Ludwig Borchardt and Louis Kroon placed the number at 36,000. According to Miroslav Werner, a workforce of no more than 30,000 was needed in the Great Pyramid's construction. Evidence suggests that around 5,000 were permanent workers on salaries, with the balance working 3 or 4 month shifts in lieu of taxes, while receiving subsistence wages of 10 loaves of bread and a jug of beer per day. Zahi Hawass believes that the majority of workers may have been volunteers. Most archaeologists agree that only about 4,000 of the total workforce were laborers who quarried the stone, hauled blocks to the pyramid, and set the blocks in place. The vast majority of the workforce provided support services such as scribes, toolmakers, and other backup services. The tombs of supervisors contain inscriptions regarding the organization of the workforce. There were 2 crews of approximately 2,000 workers, subdivided into named gangs of 1,000. The gangs were divided into 5 files of 200, which were in turn split into groups of around 20 workers, grouped according to their skills, with each group having their own project leader and a specific task. In October 2018, a team of archaeologists from the Institut Français d'Archéologie Orientale and University of Liverpool announced the discovery of the remains of a 4,500-year-old ramp contraption at Hatnub, excavated since 2012. This method, which aided in lifting the heavy alabaster stones up from their quarries, may have been used to build Egypt's Great Pyramid as well. Yanis Gordon, co-director of the Joint Mission at Hatnub, said, "The system is composed of a central ramp flanked by 2 staircases with numerous post holes, using a sled which carried a stone block and was attached with ropes to these wooden posts. Ancient Egyptians were able to pull up the alabaster blocks out of the quarry on very steep slopes of 20% or more. As this system dates back at least to Khufu's reign, that means that during the time of Khufu, ancient Egyptians knew how to move huge blocks of stone using very steep slopes. Therefore, they could have used it for the construction of his pyramid." Internal ramp hypothesis. Howden's father was an architect who, in 1999, thought of a construction method that, it seemed to him, made more sense than any existing method proposed for building pyramids. To develop this hypothesis, Jean-Pierre Houdin, also an architect, gave up his job and set about drawing the first fully functional CAD architectural model of the Great Pyramid of Giza. His scheme involves using a regular external ramp to build the first 30% of the pyramid, with an internal ramp taking stones up beyond that height. The stones of the external ramp are recycled into the upper stories, thus explaining the otherwise puzzling lack of evidence for ramps. After 4 years working alone, Houdin was joined by a team of engineers from the French 3D software company Dassault Systèmes, who used the most modern computer-aided design technology available to further refine and test the hypothesis, making it, according to Houdin, the only one proven to be a viable technique. Houdin published his theory in the books Khufu, The Secrets Behind the Building of the Great Pyramid in 2006, and The Secret of the Great Pyramid, co-written in 2008 with Egyptologist Bob Brier. In Howden's method, each ramp inside the pyramid ended at an open space, a notch temporarily left open in the edge of the construction. This 10 square meter clear space housed a crane that lifted and rotated each 2.5-ton block to ready it for 8 men to drag up the next internal ramp. There is a notch of sorts in one of the right places, and in 2008 Howden's co-author Bob Brier, with a National Geographic film crew, entered a previously unremarked chamber that could be the start of one of these internal ramps. In 1986, a member of the French team See Below saw a desert fox at this notch, rather as if it had ascended internally. Howden's thesis remains unproven, and in 2007, Egyptologist David Jeffries from the University College London described the internal spiral hypothesis as far-fetched and horribly complicated, while Oxford University's John Baines declared he was suspicious of any theory that seeks to explain only how the Great Pyramid was built. Howden has another hypothesis developed from his architectural model, one that could finally explain the internal Grand Gallery chamber that otherwise appears to have little purpose. He believes the gallery acted as a trolley chute or guide for counterbalance weights. It enabled the raising of the 560-ton granite beams that roofed the king's chamber. Howden and Breyer and the Dassault team are already credited with proving for the first time that cracks in beams appeared during construction, were examined and tested at the time and declared relatively harmless.